All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The topic for today's webinar is Driving Transparency and Innovation inside Fort Lauderdale's Strategy Playbook. I'm excited to introduce Aricka Johnson, Structural Innovation Manager for the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Ted Jackson, ClearPoint Strategy Co-founder. The audience will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but we encourage you to submit any questions in the Q&A tab. Without further delay, let's get started. Ted.
Thanks, Megan, and thank you, Aricka, for joining me. Tell me a little bit about Fort Lauderdale and about your role there.
So Fort Lauderdale is a really exciting city. It's going through a really big growth period right now. We're seeing lots of new businesses come to Fort Lauderdale. What was once a sleepy retirement community is now turning into a mecca for marine and tourism. We have about 190,000 residents, but we also see that number double every day with commuters. I've been with the city for about 8.5 years now, so I've gotten to see a lot of this exciting growth happen over time, which is always really exciting. For those of you that don't have a structural innovation manager in your city, and it's, I think, a unique title, so probably not too many, my work is really focused on strategic planning, quality management, innovation, performance management, really everything that's kind of in that planning data wheelhouse.
That's great. So where are you? Where is Fort Lauderdale in your strategic planning journey?
So we are just coming off the cusp. Last October, our third 5-year strategic plan went live. So it's really exciting, to have a new plan, work on implementing it, start thinking about how do you communicate this plan and track it going forward. And so one of the exciting ways that we did that is we went and we relaunched, rebranded, re-updated, re-everything our strategic plan dashboard. And the intent behind our strategic plan dashboard is really to promote transparency and accountability, not only internally, but externally. We know that once we start putting things out into the universe for the public to look at, analyze, scrutinize, we really want to make sure that we are comfortable with that information, but it also makes sure that we're moving the needle forward in all of the different goals that we have. Our current strategic plan is divided into 6 goals, and then we have 5 what we call guiding principles. And so these are areas that used to be internal service goals, so think things like fiscal responsibility, innovation, customer service. But as we were developing this new strategic plan, we realized, these really shouldn't be standalone goals. These are really things that we should be doing as a part of every action we have, whether we're focusing on, resilience and infrastructure, public safety, customer service, and fiscal responsibility. We can't separate those out. They have to be done together. So that's really kind of at a really high level where we're at in our strategic plan journey, a little bit of new. But also, like I said, this is our third 5-year plan. So we've been doing this for about 15 years.
Awesome. Can you show us what that plan looks like? I think you've put it already into a public-facing dashboard.
So I'm sharing with you all, and it'll probably take just a moment to load up, but this is our public-facing strategic plan dashboard. So I mentioned we have 6 goals, and if you are good at counting, you'll notice you only see 5 icons below, and these are what we call focus areas. They're really kind of broad categories that define, the different goals that we have. We have one in every focus goal. We have a goal in every focus area, with the exception of infrastructure and resilience, which we have 2 goals under that focus area. One focused on, pipes in the ground, your traditional infrastructure, but then we also have roadway infrastructure. So that one's divided into 2, but let me give you an example of what our dashboard really looks like. So if you click on public safety, you'll see our strategic plan goal. We want to, by 2029, or to 2029, to be a safe community that is proactive and responsive to risk. We've identified 3 performance indicators so that we have an objective way to say, have we reached success or not? And this is really important. I think when you're giving a narrative, while that's really important to providing the context of the work being done, you need to have an objective way to say, yes, we've reached our goal, or no, we have not. And so we do that as a part of our strategic plan development. We set what those indicators are, and we stick with them for the duration of the plan. And so you can see here we have 3. Crime rate, which is primarily targeted at our police, public safety, fire rescue response times, and then police response times. And they're color-coded. So this is a good example. We have one in every category. For 2024, we have one performance indicator that's performing at or above where we had targeted. We have one that's below target and one that is within 10% of our target. And so this is what we call our caution. We're looking for improvement. We're monitoring progress, but we know that this might just be a small little fluctuation. We're only off target by 3 seconds. So if you click into one of these performance measures, you'll see that we have a little bit more detailed information about this. And so we have a graph that shows some data over the last 2 years. And as we continue on in the strategic plan, we're going to keep updating it every year until we get to the end of 2029. But you can see where we're performing. And this is crime rate per capita. So that's why you're seeing it. I believe it's per 10,000 population. And then you have your 5-year target up here. So you can see we are below our target for crime rate, which is positive. Below here, just to provide, again, context to the public and really also document what our methodologies are, we talk about why is this measure important? Why is it important to track? Why does it matter to the city? We have information on the methodology. How are we collecting this information? Right here, I said, this is the crime rate for every 10,000 individuals within the city's population. If there's an external data source, we link to that or references that might be helpful. Information on the target. How did we set the target? Why did we do what we said we were going to do? And then additional information on analysis. If we have a weird outlier, this often happens with some of our tree canopy performance measures after a hurricane. We'll see, our tree canopy, a big hurricane will come through and we'll see a dip in the performance. And we want to explain that that's a hurricane and what are we going to do to improve that moving forward? And then if there's any data sources. And we do this setup for every single performance measure in our strategic plan. Every goal has a series of performance indicators, and this is how we're tracking them.
That's awesome. It's really nice to see, and it's kind of simplicity or elegance, but you also have all of those details behind so that a resident or anyone who comes to see it can see that there is some real thinking behind it. Overall, I mean, if I looked at one of those and saw there were 3 KPIs and said, okay, do you have 10 or 15 KPIs overall? You must have many more measures that you're using across the city. So you've just chosen a few key ones to share with residents. How did you go through that process?
So that process was really more of a collaborative effort. So again, we had the benefit of this is our third 5-year iteration. So it was obviously easier this time around than it was the first time. But we looked at, what performance indicators are departments typically reporting on. Some of our departments, when they were going to HOA meetings, they were sharing some standard indicators. So we met with department leaders and said, hey, what are you already tracking? What are you hearing from our residents? What's important to share? And so we built off of that. And so we went from there. We already have a fairly robust performance management program in place. So we were able to really link the two together and said, hey, this is what we're already reporting on. How does this fit in with our current strategic plan? We had a few new goals that we had to come up with new performance measures on, but really it was, what is our community already interested in? What do we have access to? And how can we promote that information?
Yeah, awesome. One of the benefits of having your third 5-year strategic plan under your belt.
But you have to start somewhere.
No, for sure, for sure. So there are a few things that you said that I wanted to call out and ask you a little bit about, even in just your last statements. One, I'm curious about how this plan is different than your other plans. And you said you were listening in HOA meetings and in other community outreach. How much does community play a role in helping you build those plans? So for your 2024 plan, 2024 to 2029 plan, tell me about community involvement and tell me about how these plans are different than what you've done in the past.
So I think I can answer both of those questions at once. And so you asked what's been different about the different plans that the city has had, and what's been the same has been our development process. Now, we've some years added more detail into it, other years we've been able to move a little bit more quickly, but community engagement and resident feedback has been one of the pieces that we've always considered as we put our strategic plan together. And the primary way that we've done that is we have an annual resident survey that we send out to our residents. It's statistically valid and representative of our community, so it's information and data that we really rely on. And so we ask questions on how satisfied are you with the city's infrastructure? How satisfied are you with education within the city? How important is it? So we're really trying to, capture what is the areas where residents aren't satisfied, but it's also really important to them. And that indicates to us as we go through a strategic planning effort that these are the areas where the city really needs to focus on over the next 5 years. On the flip side of the token, there were areas where the city was doing really well, and those were areas that maybe we had been working on over the last 10 years, and we say, hey, we've reached success. Let's not forget what we're doing, but we can move on to a new area of focus. And so that's been really how we've been doing our strategic planning effort and considering community engagement. We also have really involved residents in our advisory boards. We have a very involved budget advisory board. And so as we're meeting with directors and kind of fleshing out what the different goals are, those conversations always come to light as well. Now, in terms of what's different, so one thing that I already mentioned was that this year we had our guiding principles. And so the 5 guiding principles, I kind of alluded to them, but I'll just tell you what they are. They are customer service, fiscal responsibility, innovation, technology adaptation, and inclusivity. And so these are the things that we look to as a city and say, hey, these are really important areas that we want to focus on over the next 5 years, but they really have to be considered through all of the different efforts that we're doing. If we're trying to improve public safety, we can't just throw innovation or customer service aside. We have to do it together. As we're looking to improve our infrastructure system, we have to be fiscally responsible. Those are very expensive things to do. And so that's been one change that we made this year. It seems to be very well received by our staff and how they're implementing and improving it going forward. So that's something that we're really excited about.
Probably also easier to manage some of those internal things on a project or focus area rather than trying to say, how are we doing on customer service across the hundreds of services that we provide as a city?
Right.
So thanks for that. So let's break down this strategic plan, right? So you have pieces of it in the public dashboard, but then how frequently do you report on the plan?
So all of our performance indicators in our strategic plan, all of the goals, those are available in our dashboard. We really look to update that data at least one time per year. And so publicly and to our city commission, we provide an annual report one time per year after the end of the fiscal year. And this report is really, we try to present it as a story. It's a narrative on all of the different projects that we've done, the major awards that we've won, how we're moving the needle. But coupled with that, we also include all of this performance data to support the narrative, right? As someone who is deeply involved in performance management, we want everything to be data-driven that we're doing. And so we really work to make sure that when we present that, it's not just numbers, because some people are numbers people, but some people also need a story. They need a picture to go along with it. And so we really try to do that together. So we do that one time per year. However, on a quarterly basis, internally, we report on our performance measures. And so we're looking at, for the fiscal year to date, how are we performing? If your target is 100 and you're 3/4 of the way through the year and you're only at 10, how are you going to reach your target in the last 3 months of the year? And so these are the conversations that we're having. Sometimes things are out of our control. Did we have a hurricane, a pandemic? Sometimes that happens. But then other times, it's a process that needs refined, or we need to improve how we're doing public engagement. And so we have all of those conversations internally on a quarterly basis.
Okay, great. I love the idea of making sure you have the right qualitative information to support those stories. And I think about this podcast I listen to that celebrates what they call the beige book, which is like a federal government, like these are the stories behind the economic statistics that that we provide. I think they're important. So we did get a question from our audience about kind of the red, yellow, green status indicators. And, I'm just going to phrase it around your annual reporting. But Sherry asked, in my experience, these stoplights can generate political pressure and pushback from owners in any organization. And so transparency is hard when you're not doing well. So how do you manage the pushback, and how do you get the support or the buy-in to produce, a report like you showed with some red in it and some yellow and some green, when a lot of people really just want to talk about green?
Right. One of the things that we do is how we presented the red, yellow, and green. And we've refined this a little bit over the years, but instead of just saying we're above target, below target, we're in trouble, we're doing well, we've really tried to phrase this around the idea of continual improvement. And so if you're green, yes, that's good, but we're proceeding as planned. We had a plan and we're doing what we said we needed to do, so that's thumbs up. If we're underperforming, we're calling that reviewing for improvement. And so we recognize that we're not where we need to be, but it also puts an action onto the data owner or the process owner to say, hey, we need to review this and figure out what's going on so that we can improve it. And then likewise with that caution, what we typically say is within 10% of meeting our target, you're monitoring your progress. We used to, I think, just call it caution, underperforming, above performing, but now we really want to put it with an action on, hey, there's something that you need to do. The other thing that I will mention is, we've been using this type of system since 2016. So nearly 10 years, a decade. And so this type of reporting, doing it on a quarterly cadence, requiring data owners to report their data by the end of the month, all of this was really challenging when we started. But now that we've done it for a while, it's starting to get integrated into the culture of our organization, where it's expected, oh, I have to report my data now. People still need a reminder, but it's not unexpected. It's just the way that we do business. And so I think if you have a few champions on board that are willing to get behind that, over time, it just does become a part of your practice.
Yeah, that's great. That's a very nice way of saying you've trained people over time that red, yellow, and green are completely okay, and this is like the way that we have transparency in our organization.
And one other thing I'll add to that is we also, and this is part of our public sharing, we also allow people an opportunity to explain the data. So if there is a specific reason on why we're underperforming, I think it allows data owners to feel more in control of the process, but it also provides more context to the public on what is actually going on.
Yeah. Tree canopy is down for a hurricane, not for massive development that's ripping up all of our public parks.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So back to our strategic plan. You have the big annual plan that you report internally on a quarterly basis to make sure you're on track. Does that mean that each department also has a strategic plan, or how does it work? How does this plan get translated down to the organization?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We have a citywide plan. However, on an annual basis, so in January, every department puts together a business plan. And what this does is it connects their operations to the strategic goals in the strategic plan. We actually call this the first step in our budget process as well. And then at the same time that departments are doing that, and our business plans include everything from a SWOT analysis, they're looking at their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, their threats, how they're going to handle that. They dig into performance measures, setting their targets for the next year, explaining why they're either overperforming or underperforming, and then also identifying strategic initiatives and saying, hey, if I'm going to do the strategic initiative, I might need funding for it. I don't have any now. So it allows for a decision point as we move into budget development. At the same time that we're doing our business plans, we have our annual commission prioritization workshop, which is where we meet with our elected officials and say, here's our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Give us a little bit more direction. Where should we provide more focus? So as an example, we have a strategic goal to, bolster housing in the city. However, a commission priority underneath that strategic goal might be to look at sheltering options for homeless. And so it allows just a little bit more direction, clarity, narrow scope for the next year to focus on. Departments then, as they finish up their business plans, will build in those commission priorities, and then we go right into budget development.
That sounds awesome. It sounds like it's a really smooth process. Are there any hiccups in it, or how have you gotten it to run so nicely?
Anytime you're doing anything important, there is going to be a hiccup because people care about what they're doing and they're passionate, which is going to automatically lead to, differing opinions and ideas. One example I have on just how this process, we've refined it over time. We actually used to hold our commission prioritization workshop at the beginning of summer, right in the middle of our budget development process. And it was a nightmare for everybody. It was very challenging to, after the fact, build all of these priorities into the budget. And it really wasn't a strategic process because you're just trying to fit things in after the fact. And so we changed it up. We said, how about instead of doing this in June, we're going to do it in January. We're going to try it out and see how it goes. And this is one case where it worked great and it worked so much better. And, we've done a few things over the years that, hey, that didn't work out quite the way we wanted it to. But I think you need to have honest conversations about what's working and what's not working, and then being willing to try something and then admit if it doesn't work.
No, that's great. And it leads to another question we got from our audience, which is how far back this will be like a test for you, Aricka, of how far back can you remember? Can you speak about like the first strategic plan and how did the city get started? How did you get buy-in, community input, et cetera? And maybe even contrast it a little bit with kind of a third plan in the process.
Yes. So I joined the city while we were on the tail end of implementing the first plan. However, the first plan was a really robust effort. And so what the city did was, before we even moved into a 5-year strategic plan, they had a community board and they did tons of workshops, meetings, outreach to identify and establish a long-term vision plan. So that'll go through 2035. It was adopted in 2013. So, almost 20 years, long-range plan that was really driven by the community about what do you envision Fort Lauderdale looking like in 2035. It was very aspirational in nature by design. From there, the city went and said, how do we actually make this vision plan a reality? Well, we have to do it in bite-sized chunks. And so that's where they developed the first 5-year strategic plan. And so that plan was very detailed. Of course, it had to be. It was our first strategic plan. It outlined, I think at the time, 12 goals, each with very specific projects, initiatives, performance measures. And so we've kept with that general process. Of course, we've slimmed down. In my opinion, 12 goals is a little bit much to wrap your hands around in any 5-year period. So we've condensed it down a little bit. We've brought in some areas, we've specified some other areas to really say, hey, what's a reasonable chunk of work that we can do in 5 years? A lot of the goals are very similar to what they were 10, 12 years ago. When you're talking about, water and wastewater infrastructure, that's not something that you're going to be able to totally revamp in 5 years. In 20 years, that's probably going to be challenging to do. But then on the other side, education has been a goal that's been in our strategic plan. And we've made a few operational changes. The city of Fort Lauderdale doesn't control the public education system, but we've brought on a chief education officer to help liaise between us and the school board. And so some of those things that were once goals, we've now counted wins and we're moving on. So I think starting really robust was a good starting spot for us, but we've really kind of streamlined and centralized what we're working on into more manageable chunks.
Yeah, awesome. I remember I was wondering if I have more experience in Fort Lauderdale than you, because I remember like 12 years ago, the city was trying to do the community listening, and they did what did they call it? Like strategy meeting in a box, where you could
in a box.
Yes. So you could pick up a box and take it to your home and meet with your community and your residents, or have it wherever you played bridge or something like that, and it would facilitate getting feedback from your community without the limitations of the few staff at the city that, you know, obviously had their limits and reach. So it was really nice to be able to think about that. And then, you know, now to listen to you 10 years later, we have this survey, we have citizens or residents on there on different councils, whether it's a budget or priority council. And now there's like a really nicely integrated process. All right, before we run out, I have a couple more questions. What would you say to someone who's just getting started? This is kind of related, right? What would you say to someone who's just getting started with strategy reporting?
I would say just get started. Start small and be willing to evolve it over time, and be willing to change. We've changed our performance reporting several times over, and every time we think we're doing great work, and we were. But now 10 years later, looking back, we're doing even better, and we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we had the hard conversations. So start small, and then, you know, keep building it, keep maturing your system, and over time it will turn into something great. I'm looking forward to the next 10 years to look back and say, we thought we had it then. Remember when I talked on that webinar, and we're even better now.
Yeah, that's great. And how's ClearPoint played a role in your process over the years?
So ClearPoint's been really helpful because it allows us to keep and store all of our performance-related data in one place. Our city, as I'm sure every other city, you know, has several different data repositories, but ClearPoint allows us to put it all in one place and to easily report on it. So for us, that's clicking a button and the data uploads into our online-facing dashboard. We don't have to go and, you know, try to be web developers to make that happen. It's pretty seamless. The other thing is that we've taken advantage of some of the automated reporting features. And so we used to putting together our performance reports, you know, would take a day or two, collecting data, putting it in Excel, printing it out. And now we've automated that. And so, you know, we still take some time to dig into it, but it's pushing a button and it's automatically generated in a matter of minutes. So some of those things, I think ClearPoint has really allowed us to spend our time more wisely, rather than just putting reports together.
And do you get resistance? This is probably even less of a ClearPoint question, but do you get resistance to the strategy reporting process? Or like, how's it after 10 years, like, you know, how's it working?
I mean, initially, yeah, it was a little bit challenging reaching out for updates and, you know, having people report back. But I think at this point, it's because we've done it for so long. And this is really, I think, to start small but evolve. My message on that is, you know, it does get integrated into your system as new employees have joined the city. And I see that a lot of like the data reporting is kind of a stepping stone for a lot of individuals' career. So as they join the city, this is sometimes the first task that they get assigned. And it's just the way that we do business. And then, you know, they'll be promoted up and new people will come in. And it's just, we're really cultivating an organization where accountability and transparency are critical.
That's great. Well, Aricka, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, sharing this, listening to kind of the long-term journey. I know some people feel like it's pretty intimidated to get started with strategy reporting, but you have to start somewhere, and y'all are still doing great work 13, 15 years in. I look forward, maybe we won't do our next webinar in 10 years, but we'll do it like every few years to check in and get the updates in Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, bye.